In a sterile interrogation room at the heart of the Los Angeles Police Department, a seasoned detective sits across from two colleagues, her badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Her voice is steady, but her eyes flicker with unease as they probe her past. "What's this all about?" she asks, not once, but twice, her tone betraying a crack in her composure. This is no ordinary questioning. The woman in the hot seat is Stephanie Lazarus, a respected LAPD detective with a stellar career, medals, promotions, and a reputation for tenacity. But what her interrogators know, and what she's about to discover, is that a single bite mark from a 23-year-old crime scene is about to unravel her carefully constructed life. How does a decorated officer go from solving crimes to committing one? If you're a true crime enthusiast who craves a story that twists through love, betrayal, and cold case justice, stay with me. This tale of obsession and deception will leave you questioning how well we ever know those who uphold the law. Miss this, and you'll miss one of the most shocking cases in LAPD history. Background and setup. To understand the chilling events that unfolded in 1986, we need to travel back to the late 1970s, where two young UCLA students, John Rudin and Stephanie Lazarus, crossed paths in the bustling halls of Dykstra Dormitory. Both were athletic, ambitious, and drawn to each other's energy. John, a tall, charismatic basketball player, and Stephanie, a spirited and competitive woman, struck up a friendship that teetered on the edge of something more. They'd hang out, playfully tease each other, and share moments that blurred the line between camaraderie and romance. Stephanie, in particular, seemed to revel in their connection. She'd steal John's clothes while he showered, snap candid photos of him sleeping, and later, in her private journal, pour out her feelings for him. To John, it was casual, a college fling they called fooling around. But to Stephanie, it was something deeper, something she couldn't let go of. After graduation, their paths diverged. John landed a job at a hard drive manufacturing company, while Stephanie pursued her dream of becoming a police officer, enrolling in the LAPD Academy. By 1984, their casual encounters had faded, and John met Sherry Rasmussen, a poised and accomplished director of nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. Sherry was everything John wanted: intelligent, driven, and kind. Their relationship moved quickly, and soon they were engaged, planning a life together. But Stephanie wasn't ready to let John go. In 1985, Stephanie's obsession became impossible to ignore. She wrote a letter to John's mother, lamenting the end of their relationship. "I wish it didn't end the way it did, and I don't think I'll ever understand his decision." Her journal entries grew more intense, one confessing, "I found out John's getting married. I really don't feel like working." Stephanie's feelings weren't just a lingering crush, they were a fixation. She began making unannounced visits to John's apartment, where he lived with Sherry. On one occasion, she showed up with her skis, asking John to wax them, a request Sherry found intrusive. Sherry confronted Stephanie, asking her to stop coming by, but Stephanie's behavior only escalated. According to Sherry's father, Nels Rasmussen, Stephanie visited Sherry at her workplace, delivering a chilling message: "If I can't have John, no one else will." Sherry confided in her father that she feared Stephanie was stalking her, a fear made all the more unsettling by Stephanie's new role as a uniformed LAPD officer, a position that gave her authority and access. By November 1985, John and Sherry were married, moving into a condo on Balboa Boulevard in Van Nuys, a quiet, gated community that promised safety. But the shadow of Stephanie Lazarus loomed large, setting the stage for a tragedy that would remain unsolved for decades. The crime, February 24, 1986, began like any other Monday. John kissed Sherry goodbye and headed to work, leaving her at their Van Nuys condo. Sherry, citing a back injury, called in sick to avoid a scheduled presentation at the hospital. Around 9:45 a.m., a neighbor noticed the garage door of the Rudin Rasmussen home was open, with no car inside, a detail that seemed innocuous at the time. By noon, the quiet morning was shattered. A maid working nearby reported hearing what sounded like a heated argument, followed by a loud thud, as if someone had fallen. The sounds came from the direction of the condo, but no one thought to investigate. When John returned home that evening, he was greeted by an unsettling sight. The garage door was still open, and his BMW was missing. Inside, the scene was far worse. Sherry's body lay lifeless on the living room floor, her bathrobe and nightgown clinging to her bloodied frame. She had been shot 3 times, once in the chest, once in the abdomen, and once in the head. Defensive wounds marred her arms, bruises dotted her face, and a bite mark stood out starkly on her forearm, a clue that would prove pivotal years later. The living room bore signs of a violent struggle. Furniture was overturned, a bloody handprint smeared next to the burglar alarm's panic button, and a stack of stereo equipment at the top of the stairs remained oddly undisturbed, as if the chaos had been carefully staged. John's frantic 911 call echoed through the condo. "My wife, she's not breathing, there's blood everywhere." When police arrived, they noted the missing BMW and the disarray, quickly concluding that Sherry had interrupted a burglary. But Nels and Loretta Rasmussen, Sherry's parents, weren't convinced. They pointed to Stephanie Lazarus, recounting her harassment and Sherry's fears of being stalked. "She's a police officer," Nels pleaded. She told Sherry, "If I can't have John, no one will." Yet, the lead detective dismissed their concerns, focusing instead on the burglary angle. "You've been watching too much television," he told Nels dismissively. The case grew cold, and Stephanie Lazarus, now a rising star in the LAPD, continued her career as if nothing had happened. Investigation for 23 years, Sherry Rasmussen's murder remained a haunting mystery, filed away in the LAPD's cold case archives. Stephanie Lazarus, meanwhile, thrived. She earned medals, became a detective, started a private investigation firm, and even married a fellow officer, settling in Simi Valley. But the Rasmussen family never stopped pushing for justice, repeatedly urging the LAPD to investigate Lazarus. Their pleas fell on deaf ears, until 2009, when a drop in Los Angeles crime rates gave detectives Jim Nuttall and Pete Barba the chance to revisit old cases. Dusting off the Rasmussen file, Nuttall and Barba were struck by inconsistencies in the original investigation. The burglary theory didn't hold up. Sherry's jewelry box, filled with valuables, sat untouched in plain view. The gated community made a random break-in unlikely. And the undisturbed stack of stereo equipment suggested the struggle was staged, not spontaneous. "This wasn't a burglary," Nuttall said to Barba, his voice firm. "This was personal, this was planned." The detectives zeroed in on the bite mark on Sherry's arm, preserved in evidence from 1986. DNA technology had advanced significantly since then, and a sample from the bite mark could be a game-changer. But the prime suspect was one of their own, a high-ranking LAPD detective with a network of loyal colleagues. Pursuing Lazarus was a gamble. If they were wrong, or if word leaked, their careers could be ruined. "We're going after a cop," Barba whispered to Nuttall. "We need to be airtight." They started with the gun. Records showed Lazarus owned a Smith & Wesson Model 49.38 caliber revolver, the same type used in the murder, but she reported it stolen to the Santa Monica police just 13 days after Sherry's death. Convenient, perhaps too convenient. With no gun to test, DNA was their only hope. Requesting a warrant for Lazarus's DNA would alert the entire department, so they devised a plan to collect a sample covertly. While Lazarus was off duty, running errands, an undercover team followed her. When she discarded a coffee cup, they swooped in, retrieving it for testing. The results were explosive. The DNA from the cup matched the bite mark on Sherry's arm. "It's her," Nuttall said, staring at the lab report. "We've got her." To avoid tipping her off, the detectives orchestrated a meticulous arrest plan. On June 5, 2009, they lured Lazarus to the LAPD's Parker Center under the pretense of questioning her about an art theft case. She entered the interrogation room, unsuspecting, and surrendered her gun and equipment as required. Detectives Greg Stearns and Dan Jaramillo played it cool, starting with casual questions about her college days with John Rudin. "You knew him at UCLA, right?" Stearns asked, his tone neutral. "Yeah, we were close friends," Lazarus replied, her voice steady but her hands fidgeting. As they pressed her about Sherry, her answers grew vague, contradictory. "I may have met her," she said, then backtracked. "I don't think I ever went to their place." When they mentioned DNA evidence, her demeanor shifted. "If you're saying I'm a suspect, I've got a problem with that," she snapped, her voice rising. "I think I need a lawyer." Moments later, she was read her Miranda rights and arrested, her career and freedom crumbling in an instant. A search of her Simi Valley home uncovered her old journals, filled with anguished entries about John's engagement to Sherry, and computer records showing she'd searched John's name obsessively in the 1990s. The evidence was overwhelming, but would it hold up in court? Outcome and aftermath. The trial of Stephanie Lazarus began in February 2012, captivating Los Angeles and the nation. Prosecutors painted a vivid picture of a jealous lover driven to murder. "A bite, a bullet, a gun barrel, and a broken heart," prosecutor Shannon Presby told the jury. "That's the evidence that will prove Stephanie Lazarus murdered Sherry Rasmussen." The defense, led by attorney Mark Overland, argued that the 23-year delay had compromised evidence and violated Lazarus's due process rights. They questioned the missing interview recordings and toxicology reports from the original investigation, even suggesting John Rudin's failed polygraph test made him a viable suspect. But the DNA evidence was undeniable, and John's emotional testimony sealed Lazarus's fate. Breaking down in tears, he recounted his love for Sherry and admitted his fling with Lazarus was a mistake. "I never thought she was capable of this," he said, his voice cracking. On March 8, 2012, after days of deliberation, the jury found Lazarus guilty of first-degree murder. At 52, she was sentenced to 27 years to life, with eligibility for parole in December 2034. The Rasmussen family, who had fought tirelessly for justice, finally found closure, though the pain of Sherry's loss lingered. "We waited 23 years for this moment," Nels Rasmussen said outside the courtroom, his voice heavy with relief and grief. Sherry deserved better. The case sent shockwaves through the LAPD, exposing flaws in the initial investigation and raising questions about whether Lazarus's status as an officer had shielded her from scrutiny. Media coverage was relentless, with headlines like "Killer Cop" and "Love Triangle Tragedy" dominating newsstands. Public trust in the LAPD took a hit, prompting internal reviews of how cold cases were handled. For detectives Nuttall and Barba, the conviction was a career-defining triumph, proof that persistence could crack even the coldest cases. Closing reflection. The case of Stephanie Lazarus is a haunting reminder that evil can hide behind a badge. For 23 years, she walked among her colleagues, solving crimes while concealing her own. It took the courage of 2 detectives and the persistence of a grieving family to expose her, proving that justice, though delayed, can still prevail. But as we reflect on this twisted tale of love and betrayal, one question lingers. How many other secrets remain buried in the shadows of those sworn to protect us? This story isn't just about a murder. It's about the fragility of trust, the power of obsession, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Let it serve as a chilling reminder that sometimes, the person you least suspect is the one you should fear the most.